Hello, I found these books as I was digging through my boxes, and it's another one of those things I kind of forgot that I had, and I thought it would make for some little bit of different content rather than kind of the normal stuff that I'm always looking at. I mean, different how it's still comic book stuff, but um, it's Michael Turner, and I've been going through the Witchblade series. I'm only up to issue 5, and then Fathom, I think I'm only up to issue 4 or 5. And I haven't been moving very quickly through them. It's kind of unfortunate because I actually really enjoy those books. I'm always like, I'll get to them. I'll get back to them. I'm not going to forget them. But then a lot of time has passed. But I wanted to show these because this was kind of a big moment in Michael Turner's career as far as I can tell. Um, Most of you, I'm sure, will know Michael Turner, but just in case there's anybody who doesn't quite know or understand, Michael Turner was a guy who was brought on to Top Cow Studios under Mark Silvestri, and he started doing some, I believe, like background work and stuff like that as he was getting started. And then he did some works. He did a Ballistic, the Cyberforce character, Ballistic miniseries. And then what really shot him to stardom and fame was Witchblade. Everyone knows Witchblade, at least in comics world. Everyone's heard of it. And Michael Turner just blew up. And this was happening, as I recall, at the same time as like J. Scott Campbell over at the Wildstorm Jim Lee Studios. And they were kind of like, they were very similar in certain ways. They had a very distinctive style, very clean, very fun, very exciting, and they were both known for drawing beautiful women. That's one of those big things that both J. Scott Campbell and Michael Turner were known for. And I was going to say it was like there was a competition between them, but that's not the right word to use. It implies that there was some kind of like conflict, and as far as I know, there never ever was. They were just two guys who were both extremely popular, part of like a new crop of artists coming up, and they were both awesome. And Michael Turner died of cancer. I believe it was 2008, if I'm remembering correctly. I remember getting that news, reading it somewhere. Like Michael Turner, he'd been out there publicly. They'd been battling cancer, and it was a real struggle. There was the articles that come out how he was some kind of cancer in his hip, and he lost several pounds of bone. Like they had to cut the bone out. So I imagine he had to walk around on crutches. But whenever you see pictures of the guy, interviews of the guy, he always seemed to be this fun, nice, exciting guy. He was a young guy. He was a handsome guy. And he had a big career blowing up in the comics world. And he was, I'm sure he was making a lot of money. I mean, when you get to make books that sell big time, you can do pretty well for yourself. And Michael Turner was one of the biggest names. And I always felt like, to me, he was one of those guys that could have had I always kind of likened it to like a Todd McFarlane type career. And what I mean by that is he had a distinctive style that people liked, and they would buy his books for his artwork, specifically. And it seemed to me like Michael Turner made really good business decisions, and he just wanted to grow his name, his characters, his ideas, his concepts, and he wanted to blow them up. And that's what McFarlane does. It's similar, but not exactly the same. But I felt like Michael Turner had the potential to be just a massive talent for his entire life, and he was, if cancer hadn't taken him from us prematurely, and it really sucks. But these books that we're looking at a certain point, Michael Turner separated from Top Cow Studios, and as I understand it, there was a little bit of a conflict of interest with Silvestri and Top Cow and Michael Turner, because if I understand correctly, the conversation was that Michael Turner was under contract working for Top Cow, and he started developing the various concepts that Michael Turner wanted to make into his own. Like they're his concepts, they're his ideas, but as I understand it, Top Cow and Silvestri, I guess, were saying, you were developing these concepts while working for us under our contract, so we have partial ownership in them. And if that's true, if that is exactly the case, that's really fucked up. on the part of Top Cow and Mark Silvestri. Again, I don't know. They've never really spoken about it. This is all kind of guesswork on my part based on what is publicly known from what I've read. Again, the idea that Turner developed these concepts, these 3 different ones that we're looking at here, while working at Top Cow. So Top Cow's like, hey, we got partial ownership in that. And Turner, I can imagine, like, I'm drawing your books for you, but because I sit at my desk during free time and I start sketching out my own ideas, doesn't mean that you fucking own them. And as much as I love Mark Silvestri and his work and his art, I've never had a negative thing to say about him. This is the one thing that makes me stop and go, is this how it went? And if so, that's a big negative. Like, that's not fair. That's not cool. What the hell was the point of Image Comics except to own your own concepts and your own ideas? That's not awesome on any level, if that is how it went down, which again, I don't know. You think that with as popular as Michael Turner was, they would do anything to like keep him around under their banner, because even though he'd be reaping all the praise and financial success, just having Michael Turner printing his books under the Top Cow Image banner, that's a big win. You want that, right? Again, I didn't mean to go off on this little tangent about how Top Cow and Aspen Studios, separated, or Silvestri and Michael Turner separated, and then Michael Turner went off and formed Aspen after some courtroom drama that was settled out of court, as I read, and after a big long hiatus of the original Fathom comic, it was able to be published on, by this new company, Aspen, that Michael Turner created. And he's going to make his own comics, his own ideas, and he had the popularity and the following to do exactly that, to be very successful. And I think that's awesome. So they released these 3 issues that we're looking at right here as just like an introduction to some of the new concepts, the characters, interviews, and things like that, just to get people kind of aware of and excited for the different things that Michael Turner's bringing to the table. So you got Fathom characters over here, Soulfire here in the middle, and it's EKOS. Is it Ecos or Echos? I'm not sure. I know that Fathom continued. I still think there's Aspen exists, and they're still publishing some type of Fathom something to this day, I think. Soulfire did get printed and had like at least an initial series. I have those. And Ecos, an issue or 2 maybe, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I have them, and I like these kind of in the way that they're framed in descending order. Fathom was the best. Soulfire was kind of okay. Ecos never really had the opportunity to become a thing, but as I look back on these and these concepts, I realize that I'm not particularly, I don't think I was really into these ideas. Initially, I was like, oh, these would be kind of awesome, but there's a big specific thing that makes them interesting, and it's Michael Turner artwork. The instant Michael Turner's not there, none of these ideas I give a shit about. That's something that I was talking about when I was talking recently about J. Scott Campbell on Gen 13. We were looking at those issues of Gen 13 that Jim Lee drew, and I talked at length about how J. Scott Campbell brought something to the table, and it's his art. He brought something to those characters that made them interesting, and only the main characters were interesting. The kids, the Gen 13 kids, combined with J. Scott Campbell's fun, exciting, cartoony, animated, wonderful art, made Gen 13 interesting. Once you remove J. Scott Campbell, Gen 13 falls apart completely and is not interesting in the fucking slightest. None of the stories, none of the characters, none of the villains. I mean, again, the kids, the main characters were kind of interesting. None of the others are. I feel like it's the same thing with these. The original Fathom miniseries, the initial story, I love it. I think it's fantastic, but only because Michael Turner drew it. The story was kind of fun, but Michael Turner's vision to bring that comic to life is the only thing that made it good. Same thing with all these others. The instant that Michael Turner's gone, the magic is gone and no one cares. And I hate to say that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Michael Turner. In fact, I'm being very respectful in my own way, in that saying it was him that brought the magic. But, you could argue that if these concepts are actually really good, they would transcend him. Like like Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings. You know, well, he's not around. It hasn't been for decades, but people still love the work, right? Well, it doesn't work the same here. This is a visual medium that the style of Michael Turner was the defining point that we like. I'm sorry we're 10 minutes into this and we haven't even cracked a fucking comic. So let's pop them open and let's see what's inside here. These things have some actual comic pages and story, and then some behind-the-scenes stuff, pinups, sketches, interviews. And so I think it's a neat idea that Michael Turner, I assume this was his concept. I mean, I don't know. I just assume so because it's his company, and he's kind of the guy running everything. But let's flip it open. Introducing Aspen. So there's Michael Turner, and then I guess the group of people that he brought with him to get started. That's his colorist, a new artist. I'm sorry, I'm not sure who those two people are. I'm sure maybe if I read, maybe it would tell us. But starts out again, another shot. And so there's a thing for Michael Turner in 2003. He says, welcome to our premiere issue of Aspen. It's the first book to be published by our new company, and we're extremely excited to introduce you to many of our upcoming projects, titles, and creations. To kick off the festivities, this very issue is the long-awaited return of Fathom. So he had done his initial series, and then, all the issues that he did, and then eventually at some point, whatever had happened, everything kind of paused and stopped seeing publication. I think that was the lawsuit kind of litigation that was going on between Michael Turner and Top Cow. And this is the first time that the Fathom character and comic got to return to publication. So he's just saying, hey, we got all kinds of cool shit we're going to show you. We hope you're along for the ride. We think this will be fun. And so look, I mean, for people who don't know, that's Michael Turner right there. He's like a young, good-looking guy, really talented, charismatic. And when he died, I really legitimately felt bad. This is not a guy I've ever met. I don't know anything about him outside of his work, but I remember when that news broke, I was legitimately sad. It broke my heart because he could have had an amazing career for the rest of his life. So we're going to get into a Fathom comic, like a short story. There's a couple of pages in each issue telling a kind of a complete kind of reintroduction of the Fathom concept and setting up the future stuff. The work that you see as far as his artwork, I gotta mention, in case anyone looks at it, these books, I think there's a slight bit of water damage. They're kind of wrinkly or something. Maybe they got exposed to some moisture and they kind of warped a little bit. That sucks. They got water damage. It's Fathom. And Michael Turner is one of those guys where I feel like you either absolutely love him or you just don't like it. I mean, I can't imagine anybody hates him. Why could you hate his art? But it's just not your thing. But I can see kind of why some people would not dig it. I always really liked it when it was coming out. I just thought it was just fantastic. I mean, he's been dead for a long time, and so there's no new work. And then I don't see his work for a long time. I look at it, I'm like, it's still great, but I don't love it as much as I used to, but it's still up there. His figures, his female figures, I mean, look at it. There's several similar times where we'll see things like this in this book where it's a big, awesome, sexy shot of a hot girl, which is, again, it's kind of one of those things that he got to be known really famous for. It's a very strong, lean, curvy, sexy female figure, but it's not hyper exaggerated. She doesn't have these giant boobs and this microscopic waist, and she's not sticking her ass out. So I appreciated that he could kind of find this nice balance of sexy but not gross. That's just my kind of opinion. And then the coloring, I have to shout out, while at the same time criticizing Peter Steigerwald, if that's his name. Again, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. This fellow, he did some lush, beautiful, vibrant, very new type of coloring at the time. I just feel like he had a look and a style and his use of colors, his color palette, whatever, that made things stand out really vibrant and interesting. And just look at the colors going on here. I both like it, but it's also not my favorite. I don't know what I would say could be done differently for it to look better. There are some places where it starts feeling really like the computery part of it starts being overpowering. I don't know how else to describe it. I'll show it and we'll kind of talk about it, and then you can kind of decide on your own. And another thing that is almost imperceptible is that this is a point when Michael Turner, kind of like Joe Madureira, stopped using inkers. Turner makes the cleanest, slickest pencils, I don't want to say ever. as opposed to any other artist. But he went out of his way to make very clean pencils, so much that an inker almost becomes completely irrelevant and unnecessary with the printing methods possible. He was saying there was an interview or conversation where somebody was talking about, Turner was saying something to the effect of, you do your rough pencils on one page, but then you do a light box, and he described it as ink your drawing with your pencil, meaning make the final clean, sharp, clear line the same way you would do an ink line, but it's with a clean pencil line. And he's like mastered that. These don't have inks on them. It's just pencil lines. But if you don't know, looking at it, you probably wouldn't be able to tell unless you've got a kind of a critical eye that sees that type of stuff and understands it. It looks fine. It's clean and clear. They just get it on a computer and I guess adjust levels, make those pencils nice and dark, and it becomes kind of like a dark line. But it's pencil. And I prefer ink, even though the average person would look at this and be like, there's nothing that inking this would make look better. It looks fine. But to me and my preferences and what I like, I disagree. I think a nice black ink line on it would make it look better. Anyway, enough about Rob's personal art preferences. Fathom, Aspen Matthews, jumping up, great shot, great color. She's diving off a cliff into the water. It says, water is life. It is where all life began. It is where my life began, my life. And then we flip it over. And Michael Turner is a master of like double page spread, making use of the canvas and doing a really dynamic, interesting image with great composition. And then combine them with the colors. Peter Stagerwald, again, if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, I apologize. Even though there are sometimes when I was saying the coloring, it bugs me. I don't quite like it. I feel like it's too much saturation, too much, I don't know, it's something. I can't say that's going on here, like the negatives. Like, look at the coloring, the way that it's giving the highlight, like the shadows in her hips and the highlight on her leg. It gives a real three-dimensional look. Her arm back here in shadow, and then the forward arm in light. She's surfing on the water because Aspen Matthews, the character of Fathom herself, is all about manipulating water. And so she can do this type of stuff. But these panels, sometimes the colors are a little bit, it makes the panels too dark. But that makes sense because that's kind of how it'd be really underwater, but we need to see this. So it's almost like there's drawing that's lost and you can't see. Love that second panel with the underwater shot and above water shot of her popping out of the water, riding on the waves. Look at those beautiful colors on the top of the waves. You know, this panel, this drawing, I start seeing the sketchy pencilness of it, but pencilness, is that even a word? But just to the average reader, they just look at it and it's like, it's beautiful colors, it's a great pose, it's a hot girl. What the hell more do you want? So I get it. It's just me. But look at that spread. Michael Turner, you know, there's some artists who know how to do a double page spread and just maximize that look to like the best possible effect. I talk about that often with like Dale Keown in Pit. His double page spreads are the stuff of legend. And Michael Turner's stuff, I mean, and it's got this, the color, the concept, it's just soft female character. It looks like joy and happy and fun. The pose, the colors, the composition. It's just fun. It's exciting. And so she's just kind of talking about her life, her existence after the stories that went on in the original Fathom story and how she's ready to tackle anything that comes along new. And so, you know, this is all very much Michael Turner stuff. The girl jumping through the waters, coming up out of it, great headshots. He does really good hair. And again, he's got a very distinctive look as far as the way he draws faces and facial features and bodies and anatomy, all that type of stuff. Look at that following page, though. I mean, is this just nothing but colorist? I don't care if it is. This is a place, this is a time where just let the colorist go nuts. Maybe Michael Turner's like, okay, here's where I want the horizon line. This is water. I want clouds kind of composed like this, a night sky, and then throw in some lightning bolts. But is this just the colorist? I don't know. I don't care. Again, it's another one of those things that looks really beautiful. It almost looks like it could be a shot from a movie, right? I mean, almost. It's just, it's trending in that direction. It almost looks like a still shot from a movie. The clouds are almost so realistic looking, these beautiful colors. But sometimes taking coloring that far, that real, it then clashes with the comic drawings that you're doing here. So I feel like they were really pushing to make some really modern, amazing comics that just caught your eye. And again, at the time, I was completely into it. I thought it was great. And I still like it, but it's not my favorite. There's some elements of this, if I could have my comics colored, some of this stuff I would want. And some of it I wouldn't, but I don't know. Look at these. Again, look at this double page spread. Again, I attribute this to Michael Turner and Peter Stagerwald getting together and talking about how we're going to do this. You got the ocean, clouds in the sky, lightning bolts striking. Those lightning bolts, like you can't, the only way you can do this is like with great coloring, modern computer coloring. You can pencil where these lightning bolts go, but it doesn't work in a black and white line. So that inking that I want to see, you don't get this at all. So this is an amazing effect. But is it too much? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. I'm conflicted, and I don't know how to express what my conflict is. And oftentimes you guys in the comments will kind of hear me fumbling over my words about I'm trying to say a thing or express a thing, and I can't quite get it. And then somebody will say, what you mean is this. And I'm like, oh my God, correct. Exactly. That's what I was getting at. Thank you. Lightning bolt striking the water. And then look at these shots of like underwater life, fish, all these different animals. Michael Turner was big into marine life, snorkeling, the ocean, of course, is making a comic about that. So he's big into like these animals are all very exactly correct the way they should look. But beyond just looking at a picture of a whale and drawing it, he does the composition. Big whale here, dolphins here, the, what is it, narwhals with the big giant spiky thing. And he draws all these fish in here. Like he's putting in the mileage on the drawing. And then that coloring, like the light breaking through, is pretty goddamn epic, right? But then look, another double page spread. He kind of like Sylvester. He likes to draw these characters with these like organic, abstracty shapes, armors and things like that look very much like the darkness and the Witchblade and things like that. Again, I struggle sometimes. I'm like, is the coloring too dark? You know, rough waters, lightning bolt striking, and this monstrous creature comes up out of the water. It's almost like you almost can't exactly understand what you're looking at, but you see enough to know exactly, like kind of a head and a human-ish type figure coming up out of the water. And it doesn't need to be, I'm also not one to think that it has to be exactly perfectly clear. It's some unknown creature from underneath the water. It's supposed to be a mystery, and this is what you get to see. I mean, again, that colorist is just bringing it. Like, it's pretty epic, right? And then look at this. Look at the coloring in this shit. Big armored bad guy, I assume bad guy, villainous creatures coming up out of the water. Clouds and lightning in the background. Composition's great with this big head up close. And then a secondary figure and a third. The water. I mean, I hope you can see, like at the bottom here, how much pencil mileage Michael Turner's putting in with like foaming water and waves, and it's lapping up against them. Like you got to draw all that stuff in. Great close-up of the creature's eye, and then look at this stuff. It's just a very dark night scene, lightning, a lot of blue tones everywhere. It's just pretty. To me, it's one of these things where you flip this open at the time, you must look at this and go, good God, is this good? Like, this just captures your imagination. Like, look at what they're doing with this art. Again, I won't list it as my favorite of anything, but it's still really captivating. It's pretty goddamn good. And then you have a final page of everything's calmed down now. The clouds are gone. The one single lightning bolt in the water. It's just like ominous, something's coming, and that's the last page, and it's pretty cinematic. It's pretty interesting. So then we get into some kind of ad for Soulfire. I honestly can't tell what we're looking at, like dragonfly type wings and something burning in the middle. I mean, it's both interesting, but I can't tell what it is, so I don't know that I care. We get a pin-up right here. Flip the book on its side. The main character, I can't remember the main character's name. But again, it's just kind of like, is this Aspen Matthews, but of just this universe? She's the hot main girl with dark hair. But she's got like these dragonfly wings, which is pretty epic. And then Michael Turner does these dragon creatures that are very different, very spiky. it's interesting. And again, the coloring, look at this glowing color on the bottom as she's coming up out of it. I mean, it's pretty awesome, you know? I just don't know that the concept really was anything I was super interested in. And then you got like a sculpture coming out, ad space. I'm sure they're running ad space to, you know, generate revenue. An interview with Jeff Johns. I have really nothing to say about it. I have nothing negative to say about Jeff Johns, but I have nothing positive in as much as if I've ever read anything he's ever written, I didn't know it, and it's never stuck with me. I think he's done primarily DC work, Green Lantern, things like that. Let's see, it says right here, JSA, The Flash, Hawkman, and then the Avengers, upcoming Teen Titans. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know he's very popular. He's had a big, long career. I have nothing negative to say against him, but I've just never read anything of his that ever stuck out that made me go, oh my God, I need to read that. Rough sketches coming in here for some of the characters of the Ecos comic book that's coming up that he's going to write. This is a pinup of this artist, Talent Caldwell, that we'll get into in one of the further books. It's certainly fine. It's weird cropping with their head off the top of the page like that. And then there's a interview with Michael Turner himself. And, you know, it's just kind of got the basic stuff of, he talks about having gone through cancer treatments that he, it's kind of affected him. And he's like, I need to attack everything I want to do now and go for it because, Jesus, Lord, you don't know when you may not be able to continue in the future, which is very good advice for everybody. I mean, you know, we have a near-death experience and you're like, I could have been over and I accomplished none of the things I wanted to in life. So for God's sakes, attack what you want to do. So they talk about naming the company and when is Fathom going to get going and this new artist that they picked up, you know, pretty basic stuff. And then an ad from the depths they rise. So that's issue 1. Let's get into issue 2. Let's keep moving through them. I keep going on these long tangents about different things and taking up time. So the Aspen Matthews, the Fathom story continues. Michael Turner likes these like half-face shots. He does these a lot in his books. It's just kind of like a defining kind of stylistic thing that he likes to do. But just getting into the character again. And the world, there's these creatures again. You know, the creature's kind of interesting, but I like the girl in the dress and the designy elements. That looks really cool. I really like that half-face shot, you know. He's got a facial structure that's very much like, that's Michael Turner. I know Michael Turner's artwork, and you look at it, you're like, that's him. The eyes, nose, mouth. But I think it looks good. And again, it's just pencil lines. And most people like the coloring. The clean pencils hide it, and the lack that there's no inks, and then the coloring hides it. Like, you just wouldn't know. If you were to look at this compared to like the first miniseries of Fathom, where it was inked by Joseph Weems, I think for the most part, I can see a difference. Joseph Weems' inks on Michael Turner are amazing. But whether Turner just thought his pencils, he could just get away with it, and who would know, who would care? Maybe he thinks it looks better. Maybe he was just trying to save $1-ish, and maybe I'm sure that factors in. Like, you don't have to pay an inker now. Always loved this shot. It's like one of those things where you're like, he's known for drawing hot girls, and again, he's got a body structure kind of style that's distinctively him. It's not crazy exaggerated like I was talking about before, but, you know, kind of long arms, big hands, you know, wide hips. I love the like off the shoulder shirt on her. She's sexy and she's hot, but she's not grossly overdone and sexualized. It's beautiful without being gross. Great coloring. She's walking along the water. You know, she can, but then something disrupts it. She falls into the water. Something rises up out of the water. Now she can control it, like she can weaponize water, so her hand charges up. And then more underwater people pop up. Got girl and guys saying, come with me if you want to live. So I guess she does. They go down under the water. And then they run into this other character who's from the original Fathom miniseries. Chance is his name. He's a pilot. I appreciate what the colorist is doing with, like, it's this sunset kind of color palette, right? on an island, you know, Bora Bora, and he's under some covering, you know, so the coloring is trying to show him in shade with light casting through. I get what he's doing. I don't think it works here. He's talented. They're trying something different. I don't think it works. I think it kind of screws it up. I don't think that works. And another character is like a old military like admiral, and he knows a lot of information. It's a pretty good face, but again, I think that the coloring, like even like the flame, the colored in computer colored flame, it's too airbrushy and soft edge, and I don't care for it. It's kind of fine. It's not ruining anything, but I don't like it. And then again, the coloring in a dark room with like the light coming through the Venetian blinds or whatever, casting these lines on them. It's interesting, but I don't think it works. But I don't know shit. But then, you know, Aspen got picked up by these other three people. They're going underwater, and then they start getting... This is one of those things that I thought was really interesting about this book in terms of, like, Michael Turner legitimately can think of amazing, like, here's an idea, and I'm going to show it visually, and he can do, like, widescreen, big-budget, like, movie special effect visuals on a comics page, sometimes I think in a way better than almost anybody, you know, for his kind of era and where he comes from. You'll see what I mean here. He comes up with this idea. I assume it's him. I assume it's Michael Turner if he's not getting artist help. I'm sure this is his idea. But anyway, Aspen is with these other characters that got her. They're going underwater, and they're getting like news reports of water, lakes, rivers, streams draining into the ground. They can't explain it. And then we're at Chicago, Detroit, Toronto, and it's showing like these bodies of water, also correct building structures. Thank you, Michael Turner, for not just drawing random rectangular shapes. He like actually looked at cities and drew appropriate fucking buildings. Thank you. No one else, so many other artists wouldn't do that, especially from a certain studio of the same era. We won't mention them. But the water starts bubbling up into this like sphere shape, bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, what's going on? Because this whole concept of the Fathom comic is that it's about this underwater race of people that can manipulate water to almost with no end. And so it's all about, you know, water is a big focus. But the water starts bubbling up. Holy shit, look at this double page spread. It's both completely epic in scale on an unbelievable level, and I also don't think it works because of the limitations. They really went for it. They swung for the fences. If you can visually understand it, like you're seeing, if I'm, you know, saying right, this is like the Great Lakes. But what's happened is the water has pooled up and been pulled out of the ground, formed a giant sphere, and is now hovering over the ground. These characters that live underwater somehow, some way can do this. So how do you even conceive of how to draw this in a way that makes sense? Well, you get an angle you choose, you get a topographical look of what the Great Lakes themselves would look like, and then now you have to draw those shapes, but then draw them empty of water, and then use your coloring techniques to draw in like the city for seen from afar, lights and stuff, and then you got these giant spheres. Now, the composition of everything, I think, is exactly perfect. The angle that we're looking at it from, the sphere up here, the one here, the one here. The parts that throw me off are these, like, patchy-looking, computer-looking clouds. And the old-school 3D rendering look of the balls of water. It works, you get it, but I don't... I mean, maybe it's the best they could do at the time. Maybe they could come up with a better technique to do it now. I don't know how else. They were trying to push the boundaries of everything. So I think it's an incredible idea. And what Michael Turner envisioned is like, imagine this in a movie. Like, this is a scene from a movie that just fucking blow your mind. But I don't... It just looks like... I don't like the clouds and the way that the water looks. But... how else would you do this at the time? This is probably as good as you could possibly do it at the time. So that's the end of that story in book 2. So there's more stuff in here. Big double page spread of the upcoming Soulfire. All the characters, you know, it's just, as I look back on it, and I kind of vaguely remember what I'd read. Some amazing visuals by Michael Turner. Double page spreads, big figure shots, fighting creatures, monsters, the hottest girls. But I did not give a shit about the story, not one bit. It just is not something that fit anything I was interested in. An Ecos pinup, weird animal creatures, bug creatures. Like, there's a lot of imagination going on, a lot of interesting design work. Again, very intricate coloring. But it doesn't make me go, I can't wait to read that. I'm kind of like, I'll probably skip it. And then they were doing the second, like, volume of Fathom, Dawn of War, where they brought in this artist, Talent Caldwell. Jason Gorder, I think, is an inker, right? And I collected it because I hoped that it would contain the magic that I loved in the original Fathom mini-series, or it's like 8 issues and then a couple issues where she crossed over with Tomb Raider and did some goofy stuff, all drawn by Michael Turner. Then it stopped. Then it's coming back for volume 2, and this Talent Caldwell is drawing it, and I collected it, and I just got more and more disappointed. And it's not Talent Caldwell's fault, in as much as he was just a young kid, a good artist with lots of skill. He's not Michael Turner. I've said this before. When you have Jim Lee drawing something and then someone else comes along who's a Jim Lee clone, it's not the same. When you got J. Scott Campbell drawing something and then someone else comes along who's sort of similar, it's not the same. Same thing with Silvestri, even Liefeld, for God's sakes, for all the shit I give him on his crappy artwork. His stuff is visually interesting, and all the people he hired on when they were young kids following along with him, it's like a cheap imitation of the guy you want to see. Now, Talent Caldwell is not a cheap imitation of anybody. He is doing a Michael Turner vibe, but of course, that's what you expect. But the magic, the visual understanding to make those big double-page spreads that look incredible, Talent Caldwell just does not have. An interview with Jeff Loeb. Let's see, another pinup of this new character by that Talent Caldwell. Again, it's kind of fine. It's fine. What is it that just makes it not pop for me? What's that magic formula that Michael Turner has that this guy doesn't? I can't tell you what it is. I don't know. There he is, Michael Turner again. Just a guy just living his life, making comics, being financially successful. All his ideas and concept are coming to life. What a happy fucking guy. And cancer kicks his ass and kills him. It makes me mad. It makes me sad. So that's the end of book 2. Let's continue on book 3. Let's see what happens with the giant floating spheres in the air. So from the previous book with that crappy coloring, I was talking about that male character, that his name is Chance. He was introduced in the original Fathom comic. He's a pilot for the military. And the military does have these advanced fighters that is like reverse engineered from technology they found from the underwater people. So this, I think, is a better shot of the water that has been raised up out of the ground and is now hovering as these giant spheres above them in the air. You got the city, a bunch of people gathered around, and then the ocean line, the beach areas, and they're just empty, and the giant spheres hovering above the ground. Like, this works, I think, better than the other one. So the military pilot, they got him and his buddies in these advanced, like, hybrid fighter jets. They splash straight into the spheres. They're like, we're going to go look. Because these planes, because they're reverse engineered from the people who's the technology of the creatures underwater, they are capable of air flight and underwater flight. So they go cruising through the water. Michael Turner draws these vehicles very well. The coloring gives it these great light effects. As they're in these massive spheres of water, there's tons of ships, tons of dead bodies. Like, that would kill a bunch of people, the way they'd lift up, and if they, took boats with them, cruise ships, military vessels, everything like that. But they get in there, and they start getting attacked. There's lightning bolts, and several of the fighters get attacked. And so the main character, Chance, because of course he's basically Mr. Thomas Cruise, Top Gun Maverick, but he gets his fighter out of there, close up on his eye. He's pissed off, ejects out of one side of the water. Like, these lightning bolts are shooting after him. And I like here how it shows the lightning bolts are chasing his fighter, but once they hit the edge of the water sphere, they kind of like burst on the outside and stop. And then boom, his jet gets out and he can get away. And again, this is a double-page spread of just a bunch of little tiny panels Nothing like visually, like as far as drawing, incredible, but Michael Turner's using the space to tell it cinematically the way that it needs to be. A bunch of ships floating in this giant body of water. You know, the jets maneuvering around, letting the whole panel be just like the colorist doing the lightning bolt coming out of the distance there. Like he's letting the story be told in the best way possible, even though he doesn't get to draw a big, awesome, hot babe, you know, with her boobs in her face. You know, he doesn't have to do any of that. He's telling the story and letting the art be what it needs to be to tell the story appropriately. So anyway, you know, Fathom's talking of more of the underwater people. You know, the story's going on. We're getting more of these underwater creatures. Like, again, crazy design going on here. Battles are happening. You know, conflict is coming. Fathom zapping. She can turn water into, like, focused laser beams somehow. It doesn't hurt these guys. In fact, she's kind of shocked that it didn't work. But if they're underwater people, you know, they grab her, capture her. I always like this shot of her. That face and her hair. That's kind of an interesting shot. And then, but coming out of the distance, this is where we get introduced to a new character. Kiani, I think her name is. Again, this is Michael Turner doing a double page spread. Look at him use the space. Like, there's plenty of, you know, negative space around her, but that figure is a massive figure. Like her head, you know, it's a big chunk of the page. You get all of her body in there. Look at the great, crazy, weird coloring things going on in this underwater laser sword, whatever it is. I love her long hair and all these strands of it flowing everywhere. It becomes a designy element. This sexy, hot coral armor that she wears. It's pretty good. It's pretty damn good in terms of, like, I'm going to introduce a new character who is like the focus of, I think, the main-ish character of the second Fathom series. This girl is a main character. So here's where she's introduced, and Michael Turner's going to do it. Great, great shot. But then they have to interact, and more of these bad guy creatures, these underwater whatever monsters. I don't remember who or what they are. They're just underwater creatures, whatever. Pretty good shots there. And just more of the same. They're, I think, what they do is they capture Aspen. And so this new girl, Kiani, she has to rescue her. That's a good shot, too. Look at that. Another great shot of her just, it's that thing where, you know, these comic artists that get popular for drawing the hot girls. There's where Michael Turner excels. It's like his faces are always elegant and beautiful. The flow of the composition of the hair, the curve of the body, and the pose that she's in. It's just appealing, and it's awesome, and it's fun, and people liked it. People were really into Michael Turner's work. You had to be there at the time. If you weren't, you didn't know, you may not you might not get the appeal. But getting to see him kind of grow his career from Top Cow, from Witchblade to Fathom, to he did a Batman Superman series. He did all kinds of neat stuff. If you were there in real time, it might make more sense and as to why and how that he was so popular. And then we get the giant bodies of water are just apparently slowly lowering back into their places. Can you imagine if those 50 quadrillion tons of water just dropped to the ground? To be like a meteor hitting the planet and just wipe out everybody. It'd be pretty epic, but I guess they're just slowly returning back to the ground, then on to, you know, the next Fathom series that Talent Caldwell was going to draw. Just to pin up Michael Turner, you know, these creatures and her kind of right in the center. It's just a designy, fun thing. It's good. It's cool. Colorist is really making that thing pop too. But yeah, they're really pushing fall of 2004. The new series, and they interviewed the artist Talent Caldwell. I think he was only 2 years older than me at the time when this was coming out. Just a young guy in his 20s at the time. I looked up his Instagram just before I started filming. I think the last thing he posted was from like more than a decade ago. I don't know what he's doing. I assume he's still alive. But he's got an Instagram page, but he doesn't post there. So I wonder if he got out of art. Did he go into advertising where the money's a lot better? You know, did he just kind of burn out of comics, or he just couldn't make enough money in comics? Like, I certainly get that. So again, here's all his pencil artwork. It's certainly fine, but it doesn't have the Michael Turner magic. It's just not there. And it's an indefinable, intangible thing that a person has or you don't. And I do not mean any disrespect to the artist, but he's not Michael Turner, and it was not the same. I was not interested in anything he was doing. You know, the artwork is good. I think anybody would be happy to have his skill level working on their comics, but when you're used to Michael Turner's shit, this is not the same. Pinup, not sure who did the artwork. It doesn't really say. And then like some hyper-colored version of those Ecos characters that I'm super not interested in. I mean, that's an interesting kind of digital painting, but and then again, that Soulfire kind of double-page spread. I mean, it's a good spread. Center character, villains, heroes, everything's there. Good title. You know, they're selling it. They're hyping it up. And we'll eventually look at it. But that's it. So that's Michael Turner starting his own company and giving us something to just get us excited about it and introduce us to what they've got going on. And I think it works. It's pretty smart. Like, new company, popular artist. I'm going to show you what I can do and what my interests are, and come with me on the journey, he's saying. And you know what? Most of us were there. I think he always had great sales, and his series always did really well. And God, it would have been neat to meet him. I'd love to meet any of these artists. I've never met anybody. Who have I met? I've met Jim Lee, and I've met, or at least I was in the presence of Ed McGuinness, but I ended up talking with his inker, Dexter Vines, and asking him how he does his inking and what tool does he use. And I got to have a little conversation with him for a minute. I've met Matt Banning, the inker. I had an extended conversation with him just 2-3 years ago at a convention. He sat across from me. Joe Benitez from Top Cow, who does that Lady Steampunk series. He sat across, so I got to see him from a distance. But so again, I'd like to meet any of these artists. You know, I'm just a fanboy nerd at heart, like a lot of us. And I'd love to meet any of them. But Michael Turner, it's just, I feel a sadness of, like, I would love to meet him because he's dead and it will never, ever happen. Like J. Scott Campbell, like my brother John, if I remember correctly, J. Scott Campbell was at one of these conventions that we were at. And I think my brother John, if you watch this, correct me in the comments, but I think my brother said that he went into the bathroom and was standing in a stall taking a piss next to J. Scott Campbell because we were laughing. And I think he was saying, like, I should have just said under my breath, like, Battle Chasers was so much better than Danger Girl, and just to fuck with him, just to have a laugh. Like, we joked about that after the fact, but I'm pretty sure my brother, stood, 1.5 feet away from J. Scott Campbell with their dicks out, pissing into a wall, and I wish that was me. Anyway, I would love to meet any of these people, but because Michael Turner is gone, it's just sad. He could still be drawing to this day, making cool shit. I don't know. I guess that's it. I've droned on long enough. So these were fun, and we'll definitely get into. I got to finish up the Fathom series on the channel and Witchblade, and then we'll look into the Soulfire and Ecos. I didn't care for him too much from a story point, but artistically, if it's Michael Turner, you're getting at least something visually interesting. So that's it. That's all I've got for now. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.